Hello everyone. You're about to hear a synopsis of the film Alone. Enjoy. In just 1 week, 10 tons of white powder were smuggled from Colombia to California. Overall, 20 tons of illegal substances are dumped on American streets every day. In Tijuana, federal police working with the DEA are preparing to raid a nightclub. A Colombian named Lucero was throwing a party there. He created the largest drug trafficking route into the United States. Ben has been hunting this criminal for 7 years because Lucero never stays in the same place 2 nights in a row. The police removed the guards and threw flashbangs into the club, in which the gates were sawed down and the remaining guards were shot. However, Lucero managed to escape and ran for the back exit. Having escaped from the basement onto the street, the bandit jumped into a car. Only the wind gave chase. The agent was lucky, the car was stuck in traffic. He cut out the 6 and pointed a sawed-off shotgun at the kingpin.
You can't even imagine the mistake you're making. This will only make things worse for everyone.
The operation was a success. Lucero was finally arrested. And his partner Hicks can now take off their masks and go home. Baldy lied to his wife that he wouldn't arrive until tomorrow, but instead arranged a surprise for her. The head of the DEA declared that everything would be different now. They dealt a serious blow to the cartel. However, the dragon immediately grew a new head. In the Mexican city of Mexicali, Lucero's people were attacked by another cartel. From now on, this is El Diablo's territory. Afterwards, an armed group seized a laboratory where tons of powder were being produced. Lucero smuggled a satellite phone and called his contact in the Mexican government. This is how the kingpin and the agents monitoring him learned that his entire business had been taken over by a brutal competitor. Afterwards, Lucero called his right-hand man, Santos, and asked him not to screw him over. They must remain a family. That same day, the corrupt prosecutor was killed. DEA agents were celebrating a successful operation when they learned of the massacre. Lucero and his friend from the ghetto, nicknamed Bomba, dropped by the party. In Mexicali, Diablo Xunda's man met with the American Jack Hollywood. He is the one organizing the shipments of goods to America. But first, they need to get rid of the annoying DEA agent in 10. The killers received the contract, and after the guests had left, they descended on the sleeping couple. Viteru was wounded, but he himself took out one of the attackers. You won't get to Diablo, the dying mercenary whispered. Viteru returned to the house and saw that his wife was also seriously wounded. She was crying and asking him not to worry. The agent called an ambulance and passed out. Viteru woke up in the hospital, and the first thing he did was call his wife. His best friend was nearby. Hick informed Viter that Stacy had already been buried. Immediately after being discharged, the man went to the cemetery to look at his wife's grave. Viter was determined to get revenge. The first thing he did was check on Lucero in his cell. He was likely the one who sent the killers. The crime boss has photos of his family on the walls, but he pretends not to notice the wind. The policeman lost his temper and approached the prisoner too closely.
I just asked him for cigarettes. I have cigarettes.
Lucero finally made contact and made it clear to Vader that he would already be dead if the Colombian wanted it. Vader would have to start searching for the mastermind from the very bottom, so he went to the bomb to find out which of the gangsters was handling the large-scale deliveries. He ratted out the guys from the southern neighborhood. That night, the gang visited the ghetto. Bomba took his pet dog, a small dog named Capone, with him. Capone sniffed every car in the neighborhood until he found the one with the hidden drug. A local woman tried to ward off the cops, but her enthusiasm faded when she saw bags of white powder inside. She said the car belonged to a man named Monroe, also known as Parate Bobacos. The trio found out where this guy lived and broke into his house. There was dope strewn everywhere. The guy sat on a chair with his tongue sticking out of his slit throat. Another dead man lay in the kitchen. The word Diablo was carved into his back. The owner of the house opened fire on the agents in the bedroom. He hid in the attic, afraid of being hacked to pieces like his buddies. Hicks climbed up to the dealer with his hands up to talk. Paredes would have to surrender, otherwise they would simply shoot him through the ceiling. The bandit calmed down and came down. He told me a new wholesaler had appeared at the market. He promised to bring merchandise at a reduced price, but when he showed up, he started slaughtering his friend's eyes. Paredes refused to name the middleman. He still wanted to live. Then Vitor pulled out his revolver and left only one bullet in the chamber. If Paredes didn't name him, he'd pull the trigger all 6 times, and the dealer's brains would fly everywhere. He kid.
I don't know. Some idiot nicknamed Jack Hollywood. Jack Hollywood?
The boss counted all the bullets on the floor and realized VR was bluffing. Overdose had received calls about the merchandise from a tanning salon. Hicks sat nearby with a camera and soon spotted this Jack Unagi Wood. Jack spotted him right away too. He tried to keep a low profile and go about his business, but the wind blocked the road. The cop started asking questions about Overdose directly. Why had he called this dealer 10 times in a row? Jack sent a cop saying he was talking nonsense.
Call my lawyer? Your lawyer?
Hicks ran to calm his partner down. Jack was clean. He only had one unpaid ticket. However, the rich kid managed to slip up. He called the Overdose a black man, although Vitor didn't mention his race. Jack visited his Colombian accomplice, who is now hiding in a house in Los Angeles. It was Honda who carried out that massacre in the ghetto and called from everyone called. Jack didn't forgive Honda for such a mistake, and the scumbag up. Lucero asked Santos to move his family to safety, but as soon as his wife and son got into the car, it caught fire, and the second later exploded. That's how Apple dealt with his competitor's family.
Your duty was to protect her. You must forgive me. God will forgive. But I can't.
Now Lucero wanted to meet with the DEA agent to help him find this El Diablo. After all, he'd also lost his wife and son.
I can't do anything, but you can.
Lucero gave Vitor his bank account number so he could take his money and pose as a major buyer. That way he could infiltrate all of Diablo. Ter made a deal with one of the middlemen, and to avoid being taken into custody, he started waving his gun. Dealer Joel met at the pier. They would swap cars. One would contain the cash, the other the goods. Vitor held a meeting with his colleagues. If they didn't do something about Diablo now, the powder would flood all of California again. The day of the operation arrived. The pier was swarmed with undercover cops. Juan approached Cater and checked him with a metal detector. What? The bald man opened the trunk, which was stuffed to the brim with cash. Everything was going well, until Juan said too much.
Remember that cop who screwed the big shot? We took down his stupid chick.
Vitor couldn't control his emotions and started brutally beating his wife's killer. Just then, a police car pulled up. However, it wasn't a cop who got out, but a Mexican gangster in disguise. He was supposed to kill Vitor, but his colleagues covered him. The cunning dealer immediately blew up the car carrying the goods and tried to kill Vitor. It turns out there weren't any random people on the pier at all. Half were undercover cops, the other half were bandits. Dodging bullets, Hicks ran up to his partner and checked Juan's pulse. Vitor beat him to death. Hicks shot the corpse. Juan was supposedly killed during the shootout. Many cops were taken down. Vitor grabbed a rifle and started shooting back at the Mexican bandits. Among them were many women. Baldy spared no one. Finally, the shootout was over, so the police operation eventually turned into a brutal massacre. The dealer managed to escape. The boss rightly suspended Vetro. The officers were killed because of him. He'll be home for at least 6 months. Then a psychiatrist will decide whether to return to duty or not. Vetro visited Lucero again. They were almost talking like friends. The boss even offered a deal. He'd tell where Diablo kept his money, and the cop would transfer him to a more secure prison. The stash was in Mexico. There would be another brawl today, and he'd need 4 men for support. The bald man was hoping for his friend's help, but Hicks had no intention of going to Mexico. He had a wife and daughter, by the way. He wasn't about to let them down.
You're leaving a terrible mess behind that I'll have to clean up later.
But the bald man couldn't care less about his wife, who's no longer alive, and he couldn't care less about anyone else. Vitro turned to the bomb for help. He, in turn, recruited the most reliable guys from the ghetto. Suddenly, Hicks showed up here.
Couldn't let you go alone.
The gang raided Joe's drug dealer's club. Bomb was the first to burst in and smash the place with a 6-barreled machine gun. Vitain pulled the shotgun on the dealer and forced him to contact the supplier. Jack answered the phone and received a large order for the best product. They agreed to conduct the deal in Mexico in the middle of the desert, Moreover, Jack... He may not be Diablo, but he can bring them Diablo. Jack started acting rude as usual. For this, they beat him up and started burying him alive. The problem is, Jack has never seen this Diablo. He only sells his product. Sobbing, Jack told them where he dropped the money after the deal. They threw him on a plane and ordered him to do everything as usual. A tracking device was inserted into one of the stacks. Mexican soldiers were waiting for Jack in Mexicali. They immediately realized something was wrong. The American had been beaten for some reason and had arrived much later. The commander ordered Jack's execution. Once the middleman was eliminated, the soldiers scooped up all the bags of money from the plane. The partners waited until the airfield was empty. Then they jumped out of the plane and followed the soldiers in a stolen car. Here, they stopped at the nightclub where Lucero had been arrested earlier. Wind remembered that one could get in through a secret entrance. Together with Hicks, they entered the establishment unnoticed. Hicks quietly took out the soldier to keep him quiet. Then they passed through a room littered with money. In the back room, Lucero's right-hand man, Mateo Santos, sat among the candles. Could he really be Diablo?
Why did you kill my wife, dude?
You think it was me? Who?
Attacked Vitor from behind, strangled him. Meanwhile, we see a contented Lucero who, as agreed, is being transferred to another prison. They were about to gouge Vitor's eyes out, but the executioner was distracted by Hicks's shot to a Seymour. Bald cop resisted. He stabbed Wayaka and ran after Santos, who tried to escape through the basement. The room flooded, so the enemies began to wrestle underwater. Walter managed to fire first, knocking Santos unconscious. Then he somehow crawled outside by the familiar route. There he met Hicks, who had single-handedly slaughtered the Mexican army. 2 wounded Americans hobbled to safety. That same night, the bus was attacked by prisoners in Ace. The criminals freed the cartel leader, Lucero. The kingpin led him to this place. After all, it was the bald one who insisted on the bandits' transfer. Despite everything, the agent refuses to give up. He arrived in Colombia, in LSR's home village. Cromaya reached his lair that very moment. The old man was enjoying himself in the company of 2 young women and clearly wasn't grieving over the loss of his family. After all, he had killed them himself. Lucero noticed the American loser and invited him to sit next to him. The kingpin isn't afraid of Grang because his men are everywhere.
If you hadn't interfered in my affairs, your wife would still be alive. You really think you can come into my domain and kill me?
Water didn't come here to shoot El Diablo. He came to arrest him. It turns out that almost all of Lucero's bodyguards were DEA agents. Meanwhile, the Colombian military began storming the city. Having dealt with Diablo, Water again visited his wife's grave. He avenged her.